All right, we're here again with an awesome panel with the help from Soccer. I'll give you them some thank yous later as well, but super excited about this one. It's close to home for us because we've been kind of messing around with video for a while now. If you've been here and been a subscriber for a long time, you know that before it was Sandhill, it was Stonks, and we were a live demo day platform. So we've been kind of hanging in and around the video space for a long time, and definitely believe in the power of it from building trust, selling things, its role on the internet more generally. So super excited to host Chris and Hassan, who I think agree with the role of video and the importance of it. And we'll get their take one on like how they're building in AI. One company, Wistia, who's been around for a little longer, founded in 2006, compared to Tavis, which is a YC21 company. So I'm really interested to hear about timeline stuff, how they're using it, how they're not using it is one of the interesting questions. But we'll get into all of that in a second as I kill time and let everyone jump in. So before we do that, the typical and normal stuff that I do. This is me. If you've never seen us before, sandhillmarkets.com. We host a bunch of this stuff. We have a newsletter that goes out, not even close to daily-ish anymore, as we focus on what we think are the highest value sends, which are, telling you about events like this, telling you about, when events like this are happening. And we have a big syndicate, which goes back to what I talked about before, back when we were a demo day platform. And now we do it more kind of traditionally, async, sharing deals with that accredited investor group. I have to, as always. Oh, actually, I think I missed it, but Soccer.com, if you haven't seen them, it's missing a slide today. Great crew. Walter's been great, always helps us pull these together. And if you haven't checked out Soccer.com before, I would encourage you to. But as we get into it, our guests today and our very our lightweight bios, I'll let them give the real kind of intros. It's always more productive that way. But Chris is the CEO and co-founder of Wistia. They founded in 2006, over 350,000 customers. I think 375 is the number that I saw, so I won't undersell him. Multi-million dollars in understatement, but 80 employees, I think, is about right. And then our second guest here with a tight panel of two is Hassan, CEO and co-founder of Tavis. And I'll let them kind of explain what they do, but they were founded much more recently in 2021. They're API more developer focused compared to Wistia, which is more enterprise video focused. And they were, like I said, YC, Sequoia backed, and then recently actually raised a Series A few months ago. So again, newer kind of in more AI first, let's say. I'll have them kind of comment on that, but really excited to get their take on this wave that we're all experiencing. So with that, the first 5 minutes are killed. Our first initial audience is up. Chris, Hassan. Chris is a very professional. I run a streaming company background. Hassan and me, I'll give us B's. I'll give Chris a
it helps when you run a video marketing company that does a content series called Fix My Setup. You get to get on it and they come and fix your setup, and you get the lights and you get the teleprompter and you get the other lights and all the stuff. So
good.
Yes.
Well, cool. Well, I get a good segue. What you can tell us more about, yourself first and foremost, and then about what Wistia has been up to. Excited to. I know it's a longer, maybe a shortened version. I know it's been.
I'll do the short version. Yeah. I don't think you want the long version, even though I like to tell it. So basically, we're a video marketing platform. Our goal is to make it really easy for anyone who's in marketing to take advantage of the power of the video and do that confidently. So for a long time, that meant for us that we were video hosting analytics. That's really what we were until 2022. We'd stayed hyper focused on that and really built the world's best analytics and integrations and stuff to give you the insights on how your videos are performing. So who in your audience is watching, what are they skipping, what are they rewatching, all that kind of stuff. Like a player you have total control over, SEO benefits that go to your site, all that kind of those types of things. And the last couple of years, we've been adding in recording tools, creation tools, editing tools, editing so you can edit videos via editing the text. We have a webinar product we launched about a year ago. And the goal across all of this is to make it really easy and simple to work with these different tools in one platform. So for example, you do a live event with us. It's recorded in Wistia. what we've seen is about 100% of webinars are edited. People take out the, mistakes. They take out the beginning. They take out the end. They take out Q&A, all these different types of things. And they also want to repurpose it. So instead of having to download and put it into an editor and then save it and render it and then upload it back and put it back in something like us, the goal is to make it so that you don't have to do all that extra stuff. It's just in there and it's easy. So that's what the product is. The company was in person pre-COVID, is very remote now. We actually have about 180 employees and millions of customers. It's an old bio, I guess. And that's fine. And then the thing I would say that is might be interesting to this crowd is, so we never raised venture capital. We raised angel money in the early days, raised 1.4 million. And then in 2017, we had the opportunity to sell the business, decided not to, and did a leveraged buyout with debt to buy back control. So we raised 17 million in debt, bought back control from our angels, converted all their shares from preferred into common, and have since paid off that debt. And so we were really right that video was going to happen and business video was going to happen. We were really wrong on the timing. And that was a way to get us into a better position so that we could own our own destiny.
Yeah. Awesome. Super cool. Hassan, you want to give the similar rundown?
Yeah, I mean, we're newer and smaller, but it's okay.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a super cool combo. So I'm really excited about the spectrum here.
Well, yeah. So I'm Hassan. I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Tavis, and Tavis, we're a generative video research company specializing in creating digital twins. And what that means is we essentially build really cool models that allow users to leverage their own likeness. So whether it's generating a video from text in minutes or even real-time interactions, we essentially facilitate developers to build these really cool human-like video experiences. And that's what our like sort of vision has always been, is how can we help people leverage their digital likeness at scale. But the story actually starts 4 years ago, before generative AI was super cool. And it started in the world of personalization. We saw that personalization was really effective at increasing engagement, and it basically increasing someone's likelihood to want to interact and watch content. But personalization is very difficult, right? So sending a one-to-one video, just took time and effort, and people didn't really like being on camera. And so we built AI models to personalize at scale. So you can create one video and then we could personalize it for a lot of different people. The evolution of that is, well, you no longer have to get on camera to record anymore. You could just put in text and it'd create videos for everyone. And now we're really focused on empowering all sorts of video platforms, video editors, or software suites to actually allow people to create videos without having to record anymore. So that's a little bit about us. We are based in San Francisco. We're a team of about 30. We are in person now. We recently got most everyone to come back into the office, and we're in the Mission in San Francisco. And yeah, it's been a fun ride. We went through YC Summer of 21. We are venture backed, so we raised our A late last year. And yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Cool. One of the first kind of big things in like the theme I want to talk about is on the company building side, like within the frame of AI. And I think it's really interesting, the different perspectives here, where Chris, obviously, 06, when you started Wistia, I don't think the word AI was probably like in your, like what you were thinking about.
No.
Clearly it's a big part of it now. Whereas Hassan, right? Like it was always like about, like that was always something that you thought could be a big part of what you were powering on, like how you were getting things done.
Absolutely.
So Chris, as from like a company building perspective with AI, like how is AI a part of Wistia and how is it not? Like, is it a tailwind that you're experiencing? Is it we had Wade from Zapier and Des from Intercom on, and they were very much like, it's a bet the company moment for them. How do you feel about it, Chris, and how have you been taking advantage of it?
Yeah, so I think it is. I think if we were not, maybe I'll describe what we're doing first.
Yeah.
And then, so basically we had to make a call, how should we think about AI? Like we were starting to actually play with GPT 3.5, I think, before ChatGPT. There's some cool stuff here, but is the market ready for this? And then ChatGPT happened. Okay, the market's ready. People understand what this is. Yeah. And we decided that like our strategy was going to be, we really need to use it everywhere. And we told every team, like we don't have an AI team. We've told every single product engineering team, like you need to look at AI as a tool. You need to use it wherever it makes sense. And there's going to be a bunch of places where we think it's going to save us enormous amounts of time or let us do things that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise for our customers. And so it's been incorporated all across the product, like in foundational ways, in the sense of like AI has changed transcription dramatically. So we've always had transcription in Wistia, but you used to have to pay for it. And it was hard to guarantee really accurate transcriptions without requiring people, which we actually worked with a partner to do. So you could go Wistia, click a button, 100% accurate. It'd be like AI plus people. And we realized that the cost was going to get there. So the cost would get low enough, and it was fast enough and good enough that we could actually start including it by default for every video. And what does that mean? It means from like a metadata perspective, we're starting to be able to give you insights where we understand what your video is in a way that we couldn't understand before. And it's enabled things for us like, we were already working on this editor. We wanted to work towards having text-based editing because we thought that was just a much easier way to edit a video, is have the transcript and delete words, right? And so it was actually very fast for us to enable that. And there's just a lot of different places where we're adding AI through the product, and we expect to do it more. I think if we weren't doing it, I would be worried. I think that would be very stupid. It's not yet a moment that I've said, like, you have to bet the whole company to do it. But in a sense, like every roadmap, every plan has some AI in it. Some have huge amounts that are doing things they couldn't do otherwise, and some have less.
And that's both internally and like in terms of company processes, like you all building products faster, better, as well as
it's like everything. It's
AI,
how we build,
like being experienced by the user as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have a follow-up question, but I'll save it for after. But so Hassan, different, right? Like the AI in terms of, and I think you were in AI before Tavis, correct? Yeah. Right. So this has been like your kind of world and built off of that. Obviously, when you think about like building a company with like kind of this AI first in mind rather than adding it on, when you just heard that from Chris, like what stands out as different, or is it all kind of, well, obviously you didn't have like the product ready and then the AI moment happened. What jumps out as kind of different approaches, or is it all pretty similar?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is important to really step back and try to determine like where does AI actually deliver a better experience and where does it not deliver a better experience. And I think that, we've seen in the market, there's like all these directives like, okay, we have to be like an AI first company now, for companies that traditionally weren't. And, and so they sort of just like throw everything at the wall. And I think there is a thoughtfulness of like, when should we leverage AI to build these better experiences? And I think there is a lot of opportunities. And at Tavis, a lot of our partnerships and the customers we work with is helping inform them of like, what are the possibilities and where can we actually, provide like meaningful improvement. And so I think like the approach of like being thoughtful, I mean, especially if you have users that have workflows that work, it's maybe not like in your face, like, oh, we changed everything and now it's AI. It's maybe actually like things like, Chris talked about, which is like transcription, which is like, oh, it's making things a better experience that just sort of seem like they just happened rather than like in your face. Now you don't have to, create a video at all anymore. You don't have to join a webinar anymore. There's a place for that, I think, but it doesn't have to be like this like complete turnover, right? Yeah. And I think we build a lot of products and models to support a lot of different things there, right? We have like, especially earlier on in our days, we were building tooling to help you blend videos. If you like cut in a piece in the middle, right, it would automatically blend it over so it didn't look like there was a cut, right? We would automatically replace words, and so that was sort of the, hey, if you have people that are way more involved in video editing, then you might want to use that model. Versus we have the extreme of like you can just create an entire video of Adam saying whatever, and so we've sort of supported both sides of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that, obviously both talking about like different ways that's being used, or one of the interesting questions I like to ask in these situations is where you've maybe been the most surprised, or like an easy one is like, where have you seen it move the needle the most? Like transcription has come up a couple of times, right? Where it's like, it's just better now. It's cheaper. Like, you don't have to involve people anymore. Where are places where you think that are the, highest usage moments? right? Where you see it really actually move the needle. And Chris and Hassan, I think that you both are going to have different kind of perspectives on this, where it's Chris had the product before, Hassan has been building with AI from the beginning. And then, so biggest usage, and then most surprising, I guess, would be the second part of the question.
I mean, you want to go, Hassan? I'll go.
Yeah, sure. I mean, from our perspective, I think that whenever we think about, like, in our world, replicas and avatars, was both surprising, but maybe shouldn't have been that surprising. But where we've seen a lot of usage is in the concept of using your likeness for skills that you don't have, and specifically, we've seen it in language, right? So we have like a healthcare company that has physicians sending out instructions ahead of surgeries in the patient's native language, right? And we've seen across the board that a lot of these like translation use cases where like it is still you, but now it's you speaking in someone's native language. Like, I think translation use cases have been taking off, and we've seen a lot of demand for that. And that was certainly a bit surprising, but it totally makes sense. So I think like these like have leveraging your likeness beyond what you would have been able to do yourself.
And where it's being used, so that's the most surprising one. In terms of where you see it used the most, is it still like kind of classic personalized sales outreach? Because that's where my mind goes, right? Where it's like you're gonna click it more. You're more likely to click if it's like, hey, Adam, you look great today.
Yeah,
you should buy the thing, right?
Yeah. So definitely from a volume perspective and from a like frontier perspective, I think sales and marketing is definitely like where we see the most volume, most usage, because that's also where the barrier for someone recording is usually higher. Like, there's just too many people. There's a scale problem, and there's also a problem of like people don't typically want to record. So definitely sales and marketing use cases for outbound or even like middle of the funnel is where we see a lot of usage today.
Got it. Yeah. Chris, yeah, so same to you. But in terms of, most usage, and I guess with an AI tilt on the answer, and then and most surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, the most usage is the place where you have to do the least amount of work to get the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's shown up for us like pretty quickly. We saw like actual significant productivity advantages with our engineering team using Copilot with GitHub. And that was funny. I remember having a meeting with everybody, and we were talking about AI and who's using AI well. And someone's like, actually, I've been doing this for 6 months, and I think I'm 30% more productive. We're like, oh, okay, all right. And we had some people
out himself. Like, I just thought you were a superhero, man.
I mean, it turns out it was someone who was basically a superhero already, so it's like not surprising. But I think a lot about that in terms of there's like so many incredible AI tools already in so many different pockets, but you have to know that they exist. And you have to believe and test and not, there's a huge problem we have of everyone over-promising and under-delivering. Yep. And I think what that's trained most folks to do who aren't like extreme early adopters is like they've stopped trying as much stuff, right? Because it's just like, is this really going to be the thing that writes the perfect email? Is this really the one? Like, I tried 4 already. Come on. And so I think what my gut tells me is that we're going to see it in a lot of places where it just gets turned on. You start to receive the benefits. It changes how you think about a product, or it changes behavior. And then we add more layers of that on top. And so transcription is what we already talked about as a good example. You turn it on, you have the transcriptions. Then you can edit them. But then you have the metadata piece, which is like, should we tag your videos for you so you know what they are? Should we organize the analytics for you differently based on what they are? Can we start to give you insights into what the video is because we know the part, like we can see within the transcription and kind of contextually understand what things are. All of that's brand new. All of that's really exciting. A lot of it is stuff that you could have an expert do for you before, and most people didn't. And so this is like a big democratization of a lot of these tools in tech. And so I think that's really exciting. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see is the places where you can just turn this stuff on by default and you get the benefit. It's going to work. By the way, the part of AI that isn't new, which is like recommendation engines and all this understanding, this was in all the biggest tech companies, right? Yeah. It just wasn't democratized. Like that's how photos work on your phone with Apple. That's how Google Photos works. That's how Gmail works. That's how the recommendation engines work. It's just now we all can use it. I feel like that's what's happening. And then I'll keep it on video, but I think some of the most surprising stuff for me has been the quality of the generative B-roll. So like OpenAI, Sora, and a few of those things, like it makes sense once you see it. It makes sense. But I remember seeing Midjourney and being, man, it's going to be a long time before a video is really there. And then it was like 6 months later, I'm like, okay, I wouldn't know if this is real or not. And so I think that's probably the most surprising.
Just the pace. Yeah, just the pace of it. I think you mentioned something that's a good segue in terms of like hype versus real, which is like and we can keep it kind of within the video space. When you like, think about that statement of like, and the pain that we've all gone through here, where it became like a meme of like, yeah, cool demo, but like what, when is this, live, or, Google keeps doing the thing where they like, the demo's sweet, but it's not really available yet. And then, like, there's this combination of like an incredible pace that in actuality, like we all are also like, I think getting spoiled in a certain degree where like we're all like, now that it's happened so fast, we're like expecting it to keep happening so fast.
Yeah.
Within like the video space, what do you think is like further out than, is kind of more hypey and further out than maybe you'd think? And what do you think is maybe closer than you'd think, right? Like, so you mentioned the B-roll thing, Chris, where like you were surprised, like that's real, like that's here, and you didn't expect it to be. But maybe some different examples of like more in the business context. So the thing about the Sora thing, or like, I don't really know what to do with that necessarily, besides like make a cool thing. Like,
I think there's a lot. I think a lot of it is that a lot of it's stuff that's really fun to play with. But like the truth is, I mean, Sora, we'll stay on Sora. It's like you can use Sora, you can make something really cool, or actually it's not open yet, I don't think, but you'll be able to make something really cool. And then what do you do? Where do you put it? Which video is it in? And then it's like you actually it goes back to another level of problem, which is just like, how do I know when I should make a video? Should I be on camera? Hassan's over here talking to you about like, you can actually type it in and it's going to do it for you. Right. And these are all different ways to solve this problem, which is this foundational problem of people being afraid to be on camera, fear of public speaking is real. And I think that's like, there's these human cultural things that stop it. Right. Basically. So I think we are, for someone who wants to do the work, you can up the production quality of the videos that you're making with AI dramatically today. And you have to when I say do the work, there's like tools from Adobe that are going to improve what a speaker sounds like. There's music tools. We have some in Wistia, but you can go use Suno and create your own custom music. You can go find the B-roll. You can use the AI avatar. You can clone your voice. You can make a great thing today, but it's still a ton of work to get it right. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's hard, which we've seen is the same thing is true with generative text, is the demo's incredible, but there still needs to be a human deeply involved, like understanding the context. And you'd think some of this stuff would be easier, and it's still not. And so I think that's the interesting thing in this moment. And by the way, I also think if we think AI is kind of like the printing press, like if we think it's going to just change everything, and I do think it is like that. I think that the changes we're seeing are enormous. What should you do? I think if you were the person who made books before the printing press, you should go and figure out how to like use that damn printing press. You know what I mean? Like you should go in there and be like, story structure, when something should be a chapter, things people care about, like be the first person in there, understand it, use it, figure it out. And actually back to what we were talking about before, you have to overcome this challenge of you have to keep trying things, even though everyone's overpromising and a lot of, or not everyone, but most people are overpromising, under-delivering. Yeah. So it's actually tiring. It's actually hard work, but I think that it will pay off because if you find the right things, they can really, you can be one of the first people in the new world who understands how these things are going to fit together.
Yeah.
I'd agree to a lot of that. I do think there's a lot of hype around like solving the entire problem. And the reality is that where AI will really, like a lot of these new models, will really help is in existing workloads, just making them more efficient, right? And I think that's the magic moment. I think the magic moment isn't screaming, we added AI. It's actually someone experiencing something and then not even realizing. They're like, oh, wait, it just did that. And like, that's the magic moment I feel like they should go to, which is like under promising and it just does it. right? So it's like, yeah, like Chris said, like before it was maybe a manual effort, maybe you had a human in the loop that would do it, and now it's like way faster and just did it, and it's like magic, right? I think that's true for a lot. It's not only, it's also true for video. I think there's a lot of companies like, oh yeah, you're never gonna have to do any work for video anymore. It's like, no, I think you'll still have to do a lot of work for video to get a good video out, but you'll be able to get a good video out if with the right tools, faster, better. And I think it's also true for code generation. I think there's been this like big like, you're not gonna need software engineers anymore, and you're just gonna be able to speak natural language. It's like, well, Chris and I already do that. I'll just yell at the engineers down there and be like, "Hey, can we make this thing?" And there's already, I'm already using natural language to ask for us to build something, and they have a lot of context and they're super smart. They're smarter than most. Like they're more intelligent. I mean, I'm on the I'm on the side of
You're
like
very
we're
smart.
still much smarter.
You're smart.
I said the engineers are smart. Humans are smart. I think that humans are still smarter than than most like these large language models. And so it's like already telling them like there's probably like a 20% loss of like what you had in your head versus that. And so instead of this like future where it's like there's no more software engineers anymore and like you can just use natural language to create software, it's like, okay, actually there will be software engineers, and software engineers will be way more productive because they'll have all this really great tooling that lets them focus on these like hard, complicated, fun problems. And so I think that's the same thing with video editing. Like you're not going to replace people creating great videos. You're just going to empower them to create better videos.
Yeah.
And so that's the hype versus reality.
Yeah. Chris, did you have something there?
Well, I was trying to decide if I should go into this other thing, but Hassan brought it up, so I think it's worth saying, which is like on the code generation side is really interesting. I agree with you too. Like the way I look at it is like if you have a 10x engineer and they understand how to direct like coding agents, they become the 100x or the 1000x, right? So you're going to have a huge bifurcation. Actually, probably what's going to happen is you're going to have way less people who are less skilled in the actual actually being engineers day to day. They're going to choose other professions, I would imagine. They'll still maybe be able to make things. But like you're also going to have people probably who are become the 10x, 100x, 1000x person. And because a lot of that's like understanding how you build problems, and it's going to shift the bottlenecks, right? So like for most people, the bottlenecks have been engineering. It's like what they believe. It's like, okay, if we just have more engineers, we're going to get to this place faster. But I think it's going to switch a lot of pressure actually to product management and to other areas. And if you have someone who's like world-class at that, their impact is going to be magnified really dramatically. So I think it's like, again, super, all this stuff is so interesting because it's changing so fast. And also, we could, I'm sure you've both seen this, but there's like the predictions that we're going to run out of energy basically because whatever it is, like 19% of the US's energy is going to data centers this year. That number might be wrong, but something massive like that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, if you need to go 2 more orders of magnitude, you're basically screwed. And so we're just going to run into like, it's possible we run into real world implications that slow us down. And so what does that mean? I've been asking myself that question. What does that mean if like we're going to continue to advance at a fast clip, but it's not actually going to be exponential? And I think it's a really interesting thing to wrap your mind around.
I think we're going to reach compute and energy limitations, and so I think there'll be like even for models like Sora, like they're incredible. One piece of it is like, okay, what do you actually use it for? The other piece is like democratizing it and making it cheap enough for someone to actually use. We're actually further away than we might think.
Yeah, I've had some interesting conversations about that recently with like there's XAI, like, the giga compute, right? Where there's like this underlying race, like outside of all the demos and like the stuff that people get talking about, there's this like massive, like we need to have more compute than anyone else in order to have the best model generally. And so there's like that race happening. And then there's also the whole chip thing, right? Of like chips that are really fast, but super like energy intensive compared to maybe they're a little small. They're not as fast, but they're way cheaper. Like on the term that got thrown in, someone who was way smarter than me on this stuff was talking about it of like what was it? Something per watt per dollar was like the breakdown of like how to get like where it actually, when you really kind of get down to it, like how you have to think about efficiency and these sorts of things. But to pull it back actually to video stuff and more generally about what you were both talking about, I think this idea of like the incumbent gets brought up a lot in AI, right? Of like it accelerating you know, the big players who are already doing this stuff and now they're just way better at it. Or which I think ties into what you were both saying about like an engineer who's already an engineer is like the incumbent here, right? Like they're already being engineers. They're already good engineers. Now they're just better engineers, right? Rather than it being someone who like wasn't an engineer before now competing with them. Within the context of your two like businesses, where do you think about like, so like Hassan and like you're obviously, you know, more startup-y, like kind of on the, you know, knocking at the door kind of a thing. How do you think about like the word incumbent as someone like building this platform? Like who do you think of maybe above you or like, you know, further along that you need to do better than or catch up to or whatever? And Chris, I think, you know, as a non-VC backed company, I think you maybe have more leeway, right? To like not that necessarily that's like, you know, your ambition might still be the same of what you want to do with it. But like when you think about, and you were maybe the incumbent, right? But when you think about, you know, maybe people that are bigger than you all and competing there, how do you think about, I guess, and we'll try to keep it in video as much as possible, this like incumbent setup of this AI tools that everyone's using and everyone's kind of benefiting from?
I mean, I can go on this one. I think that the whole question is like, how much does AI change what the foundational product can be, what like the customer problem you can solve? And I think the more that AI changes the customer problem that you can solve, I think the more that the incumbent is at risk. And if it doesn't change it and enhances it in some way, then I think incumbents have maybe arguably an advantage, but they have a disadvantage, which is like they probably have a good business. And so they need it less, or they may not move as quickly, right? We know this, like organizations get bigger and they often move more slowly. And so you have to actively fight against that. And so I think that's the way I look at it. Like there are a few players that are bigger than us. We look at this as like, okay, are there problems? And we don't know, right? Like that's a lot of what we're talking about. We don't know how well we can deliver some of these solutions. Are there problems that we can solve dramatically better that literally change what the level of the customer problem that we can solve? And if we can, and we're doing that, and an incumbent that's larger than us is not, we're going to be able to take over areas that they're not getting into or that they can't move fast enough on. If they move crazy fast and they have a ton of distribution, they're going to be able to dictate a lot more of what happens in the market. But a lot of it has to do with how much it shifts. And I think I'm going to speak for Hassan, but like the stuff that you're doing is really interesting because it's like, okay, if you want to help someone make a video by typing instead of recording themselves, that is very different. And there's going to be a lot of different products and services that exist to help people with that. And so if you can actually get a thing that's high enough quality there may be massive incumbents. They're going to have to remake the economics, everything that they do.
They just weren't doing it at all before. Like it's not even a problem that they were even thinking about.
Yeah. It's like, if you have to disrupt your business to take advantage of the AI, you're in trouble. But if you don't have to, then maybe.
Yeah. Enhancements versus like brand new takes on it. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think Chris said it well, right? I think that even for us, I mean, we're building video models to help what you might consider some incumbents in the video space to actually like, you know, take advantage of AI. But I actually see it play out a few different ways. I mean, you know, we've seen some that are using our models to actually increase engagement. So they're actually saying, okay, this is actually lowering the bar for people using our platform, and allows us to really allow people to create way more videos at scale. And now, you know, we're removing that barrier that people feel whenever they're trying to record. And I think there's others that, you know, like Chris said, might have so much, you know, whether it's revenue or strategy dedicated to, you know, sort of older way to do things that struggle a little bit more because if it disrupts their business, then it's a harder decision to make. So I think from our perspective, I mean, we're a little bit different in the sense of like we are an AI research company. Our job is to essentially build models that disrupt the way that you do things today. Like we're building models that essentially are trying to remove the limitation of time, scale, and skill. So it's a little bit different for us.
Yeah. I think it brings up an interesting thing for me, and just in terms of your two businesses also, and I would be interested to hear how you're each approaching it. In terms of buy versus build, and I think within video specifically, right, where Chris, as I misquoted and you corrected me on, you already have millions of customers. You had millions of customers before AI stuff came around, and making decisions about, buy versus build on like within the features that you already have. And I think that AI has been like this really kind of, we're all built on top of, or most people are built on top of like, foundational models that, billions of dollars went into training in one way or the other. Hassan, that might be, it might be pure proprietary. I'll be interested to hear your take on it. But so Chris, I think you're kind of clearly in a buy versus build position of like making those decisions internally. And Hassan, by virtue of being like a, developer first product, right? You're counting on people like Chris saying like buy instead of build, or buy and like build less, right? So I'd be interested to hear again, Chris, maybe any decisions you made around that, and Hassan, like how your conversations have been going.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at this and we're like, there's a huge amount of investment going into the space. There's a lot of people competing for many of the similar prizes. And so from our perspective, we get to play with them, and we can buy and we can switch between them often in many cases. I mean, it reminds me of like the CDN market when we got started with Wistia, which was like, content delivery networks for like, this is like if you can have a sustained advantage as an infrastructure provider in someone's product, you can have unbelievable growth, right? Because you capture the biggest customers, they continue to expand, they live with you, you get more big customers. Like that's an amazing place to be, but it's a hard place to be because you have to have some kind of sustained advantage. And if the product ends up being the same, then it's a lot harder. And it ends up, you end up fighting on cost versus fighting on innovation. Like it's all about the cheapest thing wins because it's going to be in people's cost of goods. So looking at the market through that lens, we look and say, okay, there's a bunch of different infrastructure providers. We should test them, figure out which ones are really good. If there are ones that are like highly unique, we'll use them. But we made a pretty explicit decision. We're not going to build like from the ground up a bunch of AI models. We're going to live at the application layer and we're going to integrate them in and try to find those moments where they really deliver a lot of value. And yeah, so I mean, that's why, I mean, it's just, that's how I think about it. I think that's the way to look at the space. I think it's also, we have the analogous space of just LLMs in general. And I think that's been shocking how much prices have come down and how good the competition has gotten there, right? Like it's unbelievable just how good Claude is compared to ChatGPT, compared to like the Meta, the Llama models that are open source, all that stuff. It's crazy how good they all are and how cheap they are, which is great for the world. I think it's like many more options. But if you're running those businesses,
tough place to be on the infrastructure. Yeah. And I think, and just to double click there for a second, because I think it's worth going a little deeper on the video side, because this has been a story in video for a while. It feels like, where like you mentioned the CDN, and all of these like video apps in general have always had like whatever infrastructure underneath the service that unless you're building video apps like you've never heard of. Like I know when we first got into to doing streaming stuff and on the Stonk side, like I never heard of any of these companies. Like, and because if you're not in video, you wouldn't know that some of these big apps are built on top of it. Is it just like, it seems brutal. Like Chris, you've been building a video for a long time. How much do you guys move around on product stuff? Like when you think about your stack
from an infrastructure standpoint?
Yeah, from an infrastructure perspective.
We do. I mean, if someone comes out with a better thing that is faster, cheaper, we switch. And I feel bad sometimes because it's like, it's like we had a great relationship. And often the best companies keep innovating. And so they find a way of driving the price down and they keep innovating. And then there isn't a reason to leave. But it's you need like a culture that's set up for that. You need a business model that's set up for that. The type of thing you get to more scale and you go back to your customers and you drop their price. Like you have to proactively do that, I think, in the infrastructure world. If you're in something that's hyper competitive and your goal is to be the biggest with the most scale, then your price is so low that other people can't actually get to you. And but that takes if you're unsure of what your strategy is, your business model is tough. So we learned actually kind of early, because the first versions of Wistia were more basic video hosting, that could happen to us. That people would come to us and say, well, what's the price per gig? And what's the price for this stuff? And we happen to figure out, oh, wait, like we can build features in our player. We can build, for example, this sounds like the simplest thing in the world, but when we did it didn't exist, was just you can capture an email to have to watch a video. So on the player itself,
Yeah.
it says put an email to click play. I mean, I remember we made it up and we did it. No one else was doing it.
Yeah.
Marketers loved it. We then integrated it into all the major like email service providers, eventually marketing automation providers, and people could see I can get leads from a video. And so it was very concrete. And they didn't think about the gigs that were delivered. They didn't think about the number of videos. They thought about the number of leads. And so over time, as we've added more functionality, a lot of it is like we're helping the marketer solve a marketing problem that they happen to use video for. So it's very different than like we are just an infrastructure company.
Yeah, moving out, making a decision to move out of the infrastructure layer.
Yeah, and it's funny, even in our case, we have like some infrastructure customers, but the way that it's worked with them is like, because they're on our APIs, we're able to give them like video infrastructure extremely cheaply because of our scale. And it's not, we don't look at that. That's not the core business. That's not the main thing we're talking about all the time, but we can give them an incredible service. And for us, it's really good because it pushes us to have more scale. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then that allows us to invest more into these differentiated like application level things. But we were big enough, I think, when that was happening, that we were able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hassan, totally on the other, would you describe yourselves as like, you're thinking of yourselves as an infrastructure tool?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're more so a platform provider. I think, for us, like the way I see it is that we're taking a couple of different bets. One is that really good, high quality, state of the art video replica or avatar models are hard to build and expensive to build, and not every company needs to build them. It's currently a sort of competitive moat for certain companies to have like the best in class model. And we think that actually it's our job to help commoditize access to these state of the art models. And that there is a lot of research science and development that is still to be done on creating really, really high quality models for digital twins or replicas, right? And so what we see it is like, we're actually the one that's trying to commoditize access to these models, and the models still have a lot of room to grow. Right now, most models that you see control the lower half of your face. There's an opportunity to control your entire face, and there's an opportunity to do head pose control. There's opportunity to do all sorts of stuff, right? And that will continue to be true. And I think for platform providers, model providers, whether it's the LLMs of the world, whether it's the video models of the world, I think there has to be a strategy to continue to adapt and build the next sort of game-changing thing. And I think on the video side, there's a massive opportunity, and there's a lot of really awesome opportunity to create like magical moments with some of these models. So I mean, the way we see it is we're taking the bet that not everyone needs to build these models, and right now there's probably too many companies that are trying to build foundational models, trying to build it, and like actually getting state of the art models is something that takes more time, more energy, or specific expertise. And we're taking the bet that actually not everyone needs to build the models. Like they can just come to us. We'll give you the models. And over time, I think that given our scale, like we'll probably be way more cost efficient at it, not just from a volume perspective, but just from like an efficiency gains and how we built the models. So yeah, I think we are a platform provider. We power a number of customers all along the vertical spectrum to create these really awesome replicas of people, text to video, real time stuff. But there's still a massive roadmap along the way to create entirely new experiences within video.
Yeah, you use this word bet that I made a note of before that I thought, and I think is an interesting question of good bets versus bad bets, and your views both internally. Like obviously there's bets that you're making. I mentioned earlier, like the bet the company moment type of stuff. Chris said that you didn't think it was all the way there yet, or hadn't really. Obviously the pressure to build it, but not like we're gonna die. What are some bets that you're seeing internally and externally that you see and you think are good bets kind of within the AI movement? And then a little bit spicier, like where are you seeing bad bets? But like where do you when if ever have you seen people, have you avoided something that you think either isn't playing out already or you just don't see playing out at all in the future? Hassan, you mentioned you didn't word it this way, but everyone building their own model, like you're basically making the bet that, you're going to come to a centralized place, and you're saying, someone who's doing it themselves, probably a bad bet, because you're probably not going to do it as well as the person that just does that themselves, like people trying to verticalize.
Yeah.
So go deeper on that kind of, this idea of, good bets versus bad bets in AI with as much of a tilt towards video as you can give.
Yeah. So I think generally, what I've seen as like a bad bet is trying to build businesses around the limitations of models today, because inadvertently, like, we've seen this with LLMs especially, but it's also true in video, is like, building businesses around just like, hey, like this thing doesn't do X today, let me just build around that, and then naturally the model starts doing that, right? So like sort of betting against the model development is what I would say, not a great bet. But what I think, I think what I believe is like also wrong bet is like, hey, like it doesn't make sense for every single company to have foundational model, because I think the companies that are focusing on building the model, that are exclusively like entire research teams, like this is what we're doing, you go much deeper. You can go much deeper. So, even for like text to video, you can go really deep in really getting the fidelity to be amazing, improving expression control, voice, and those are things that you can do if you're focused and you go deep, rather than like, hey, like we just want an exclusive model. And so I think the bet that like every single thing needs their own foundational model, every single company needs their own video model, everyone needs like a Sora model competitor. Like I don't think that actually makes sense, because it's the same way that not everyone needs to host their own servers. I mean, AWS and GCP and less so, but Azure, like those are perfectly great. They've made some like those are good bets. You can see like not everyone needs to host their own solutions, because the AWS of the world do it better, faster, cheaper, at much larger scale. And I think that there are parallels on the model side, where the model, like the model providers and model builders, they'll do it better, faster, cheaper, way more advanced. They'll be able to move much faster in it. So that's my take on it.
Yeah. Chris, good bets, bad bets.
Well, first of all, I agree with what Hassan said around betting against the models getting better. I think that's a pretty big mistake. I think good bets are ones that there's asymmetric upside. So I've just said the most obvious thing possible, but
that's good. We like that. We like that.
Yeah. But I do think it's true, is like a lot of what AI is going to let you do, I see and think about today is like, you can do things dramatically faster, or you could do things that you could not do without an expert otherwise. So I think the way you should look at it is like, well, how can I build things and test them dramatically faster? How can I try these things that, like, maybe to scale it would be really hard, but to do the one-off thing could prove that I can create something that's really going to be different and valuable for customers. And I think it's all about looking for those places where you can use AI as a tool to make basically better, faster bets. And if you do that, you're not going to be, your thing you're really costing on the bet is time. And so it actually can be pretty asymmetric in terms of it being an upside. The other thing I would say to think a lot about is think a lot about the sensitivity of your business model to these types of bets. And so what I mean by that is, I think really understanding, if you're using AI of any sort, like what are the other options in the market? Are there other things on par with this one? Just like you're making an infrastructure decision. So you want to actually take a pretty long-term view and imagine if things do work, what happens? So if things do work, and I've picked this partner, and assuming you're not generating your own models, and it scales, what kind of position am I going to be in? What does that mean for the price of what I charge to my customer? And I would just really encourage people to pay attention to that really early and try to understand the sensitivities, because in some cases, if you're, it sounds like what you guys are trying to do at Tavis is like be this infrastructure thing and drop the prices and get more scale and do that whole thing. Like that is a good bet for someone who wants to use you, right? Is like, I want to believe that as I get to scale, you can bring the price down. And as you get to scale, you can bring the price down, and that together we end up with this like symbiotic relationship. And that means I can think about how aggressive to be with my customer today on price, or how some free something should be or otherwise. And so I would just pay a lot of attention to that, because I think in
Totally.
infrastructure decisions in general, that's where I've seen things go awry, is not really thinking enough about which parts of your business model being like most sensitive to these like infrastructure partners.
Which I feel like ties back to some of the big the really the flashy demo, and maybe you rush into an infrastructure decision or whatever, and it's a startup and it doesn't work out or whatever. The company that you're building on top of doesn't make it or doesn't deliver in the way that they promise. Like those are, I'm trying to think if we've had that happen, and maybe either of you have had that happen. But that's an ugly situation, right? Where if you're building on top of somebody that didn't,
you don't want that. Yeah. Which I do think is it puts more pressure on all of these solutions, because like that people are thinking about it like that. And so it's this weird conundrum, because it's like your potential, as an infrastructure company, your potential largest customer is going to have the most scrutiny.
Yeah.
But if you get them and you get enough of them, it decreases the risk of the business.
So
it's a very challenging thing to navigate.
Well, you want the logo. I mean, I know from the startup side of things, I'm sure Hassan and Tavis, I'm sure you guys think about this. I'm sure Wistia has too, where it's like, if some huge customer already uses you and you're talking to another huge customer, like, look, they trust
makes
us.
It easier. Yeah, exactly.
The logos on the website, are there for a reason. Well, cool. I mean, we're getting towards the end of this. I wanted to talk. I mean, we've been talking about the future a lot, and like how to approach it and how you guys are thinking about it. But I'd love to get some takes on, within the video space. You fast forward 5 years, where you see things heading, like, and where you think things that will look different, things that will look the same. I think Hassan, obviously you're pushing and obviously believe in a future where maybe more of that replica, like there's maybe more video, but more, maybe not, I don't know, maybe it's live, maybe it's not. So you can expand on that. And then Chris, I think you've obviously, been in the game here for a second. So you've seen some progressions and maybe some things that did or didn't work out. So I'd love to hear your take on where you think we're going from here.
Yeah, I think so. We started Tavis with the thesis that like how to solve the attention economy problem, which is that there's like a ton of information content at our fingertips that we're like actively trying to make the decision of like what is actually relevant to us, right? And like personalization is key there. I mean, there's a reason we're addicted to TikTok. It's because we scroll TikTok and we're like, that seems pretty relevant to me. But we actually see, I think over the course of the next like 5 to 10 years, like it'll be very clear that recommendation algorithms were cool, but like the future is actually that every piece of content that you consume is personalized just for you, right? And we're already starting to see that to some degree. That you go on YouTube and like it maybe gives you segments that were more relevant to you. I think there will be a future where every single video you potentially watch will be personalized just for you, whether that's like in real time or in async. So I think that's something that over the course of the next 5-10 years, we'll definitely see is like a higher degree of personalization in the content that you actually consume. And yeah, so that would be our bet for the future.
Yeah, well, I guess that's good. It lines up with what you're working on. So I'm glad to.
It has to. Yes.
Yeah, that'd be funny if it didn't. I don't think anyone's going to use this stuff.
Chris, where are you at with it?
I think 5 years in the future, what we're going to see is just more democratization of video, average quality of video going up. I think trust is going to go down. And I think that when you start to understand the power of where AI is going, you have to enter into a world where you can no longer trust what you see. And we've dealt with this before. This is like when Photoshop came along and people started Photoshopping every ad and every billboard. I remember the conversation was like, just because someone looks like they have a six-pack doesn't mean that they do. It was like stuff like that. And it's just like these unrealistic expectations. And you train yourself to be like, advertising isn't real, right? Yeah. I think the same thing is going to happen here. And it's going to be like, there's going to be this big thing of, I don't know if this is real. And there's a lot of cases where it doesn't matter. Like training videos, doesn't matter. Like the bot on the site helping you, doesn't matter. Certain educational in there, hyper-specific things that are like B2B training, doesn't matter. But like working with a company and making sure, and you're going to make a big investment. Does the trust matter? Yeah. If you're trying to meet someone in person, does the trust matter? Yeah. So I think it's going to democratize. I think we're going to see higher quality. I think we're going to see lower trust. And I think we're going to have to find trust in other ways. So I think as that happens, I think we're going to see more of an emphasis on in-person events, live events, and content which is extremely hard to fake, where you have a real sense that there's an actual real person there. And I think that, I mean, I actually have a lot of, I should probably stop. I could just go.
This is good. Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. If you got another one, keep it going.
Well, another thing I would say, and I can make it video specific, but I think it's more general than that, is I'll make it B2B specific. How about that?
Nice. Perfect.
Is there are so many products and tools that can add so much value, and people don't use them. They hook it up. Oh, this thing's going to reduce my churn. This thing's going to help in onboarding. And then there's so much human work involved in actually getting the value out of it. My bet is that a lot of that stuff, we're going to get real leverage from the products that we use. And we're going to have, the products are going to do way more than what they do today. And it's going to be like you get a product and it came with an employee.
Yeah.
And I think that will actually potentially be, I think it's really exciting because a lot of that work, you know, but let's say it's onboarding employees, or it's like booking calls to like do customer success calls, or it's like whatever. A lot of that work is not that fun to do. There's really fun parts of those jobs, but that's not the fun part. And also it's not where most of the value is created. The value is created in like creating the amazing culture, creating the amazing experience for the customer, you know, doing something that they would never get otherwise, pushing to build a feature that's never been built. And I think we'll end up in a world where that is what we spend more of our time on. And I think that's like really exciting. And I think we'll get much better ROI out of the products that we use.
Yeah. Interesting. This is like the idea of like the it just works thing. That's like the Apple thing, right? Like, you know, that it just works. And like so many products, and I've had this experience a million times. You're like, we're going to use it in all these different ways. And then there's that lift. There's this big hump to get over in terms of like actually getting the value out of it. So like the rise of like, it just works for stuff that's much more complicated, right? Whether it's like,
it's the magic moment, right? Like you want it to feel like magic.
Yeah, for sure. And then that idea too of, and there's a larger conversation to be had there, but like the video, because video is so powerful today in building trust. And I've been such a huge believer in that, like for the last few years of like kind of being in the space. Obviously, Chris, you've been on it for, you know, almost a decade now. Hassan, like it's a huge part of your business, but this idea of it, of maybe approaching a peak of video trust. And then we're going to have to, if that trust goes down and having to like, you know, deal with the world.
I think video, I think if you believe that the person you're seeing or interacting with is in charge of what you're getting from them, I think you'll still build trust with video. So like, Adam, if you're making stuff and I know you and I've interacted with you, be it in person, be it a live event, do something like this where someone really believes it's like really you and they get to know you. What you're looking for is to understand that with that individual person, you have trust. And then you're going to have more freedom and flexibility. People know, it's just like if I make stuff with Adobe Premiere today, there's basically been AI in it already, and I'm making all these edits to what I'm saying. It's not exactly what was recorded, and that like but you know me, and you trust me, and you trust the messages I'm saying. Like, so what I'm saying is, I think default trust is going to drop, but I actually think that like trust with specific individuals might actually get higher.
Yeah.
Because we need that to navigate the world.
It bifurcates again the same way you described with the engineers.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think, and there's be use cases where it doesn't matter, right? Like Chris mentioned this already, where like you don't really care. You're like, whatever. If there's a two-way value that you're getting, it's like, oh, I got the content that I would want it anyways, whether it's generated or not, I don't care. But then there will be like experiences where you're like, you want the other person, you want to be able to trust the other person, you want that level of like human connection. And for those, I think that what's going to happen is that regulation will actually be behind. We're always behind in regulation. But at some point, I think there will need to be more thoughts around the ethics and the implications of like generated content. I think that like watermarking will be a cat and mouse game that will be really important to focus on. For consent will be an incredibly important thing. Disclosure will be an incredibly important thing. And those are all individually hard problems to solve, especially without there being regulatory oversight that's actually good. And so, especially like we're approaching an election, right? Like you will have to be a little bit more careful of like what is content that you can trust and you can't trust. Because the mechanisms aren't actually in place yet. It's actually incredibly difficult to detect whether a video has been tampered with if you're using best-in-class models. And I think with that, it's really important for model builders and AI builders to be thoughtful about how they're building this. Like, is trust implicit? Is transparency implicit? Is consent implicit? And something that we certainly think a lot about. But I think like there's a little bit of a fast and loose game being played in AI right now with a lot of model development, and I think there needs to be more thoughtfulness because otherwise it causes general distrust of the entire industry.
Yeah, which is bad for video. Bad for video overall. Well, guys, I really appreciate it. We went a few minutes over. I enjoyed it. I feel smarter. I think we had over 150 people show up, so hopefully they feel smarter as well. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you guys so much. We'll be in touch with a little follow up for everybody. This will go out to the newsletter with the recording and transcript auto generated, all the good stuff that we talked about
through AI, using AI.
Yeah. No, it'll be me. I don't trust it. I do it. No. I'll type it out after.
Awesome.
No, thank you guys. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya.